Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Enlightenment Through Understanding and Wisdom with your host, Jacob Strong. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully, y'all are doing good. So, today's topic on our agenda is what is PTSD and what is CPTSD? And how does it manifest? What does it look like, and why is it so difficult for the the average person to understand what someone like us, an empath, has gone through to develop CPTSD, and why we often stay into those, relationships and whatnot. So I want to start out with our conversation um, with an analogy for most of the population that could probably relate to this. Um, to some degree, I believe. It's it's kind of like getting into a car accident. When you have when you develop PTSD, you remember the few seconds before the accident and the few minutes after the accident. They are ingrained into your brain. So when you have PTSD, you might recognize a turn signal, like the clicking of a turn signal. It might trigger you into that fight or flight, into that defense, into that gripping the steering wheel and looking behind you if you're rear-ended in a turn lane. Um, it triggers a similar response to what happened um, at the time of the collision. That's PTSD. Soldiers get it from the sound of gunfire, right? So the sound of a gun firing gives them the fight or flight, gives them the look behind them, gives them whatever it is that they may have gotten shot at, or they may have taken a bullet or whatever. So it seems simple enough because it's one or maybe two um, physical developments that occur on a daily basis that can trigger that PTSD over and over and over again. And oftentimes, the same reaction is indicated. So what I mean by that is imagine you're sitting in the turn lane with your turn signal on and you're hearing the clicking of the turn signal, and someone comes up and rams you from behind and jerks your neck, and you have a broken neck and you can't walk again. Now, every time you're in the turn lane with the turn signal on, you're looking in the rearview mirror. Because deep down psychologically, you remember your subconscious and your unconscious part of your brain is constantly remembering that event that took away your ability to walk. And so it's that one event that triggers that. It could be in a car entirely. It could be, you're not even able to get into a car. But it affects your daily life, and it's one incident that affects your daily life. PTSD is actually easier to get rid of than CPTSD. Um, and it's also easier to live with. Now, you know, um, I'm not minimizing the damage of PTSD. Now, that's not my point. But what I'm saying is it's a different type of trauma that can sometimes be healed by avoiding a certain, thing. Say if you got mugged in a dark alley. you simply wouldn't go down a dark alley anymore. So that's one way to, you know, to negate that PTSD entirely from your life. Um, so now, what is CPTSD? What is complex um, um, stress disorder? Post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, complex post-traumatic stress disorder is when you get in that car wreck in the turn lane and you spend the next 25 years inside that car. You're living in that car. You're drinking. You're eating. You're taking a shower. Meanwhile, there's broken glass all around. There's shards of metal. There's gasoline. There's all these dangers that are threatening to kill you every single day. That you're sitting in that car, that you're waking up in that car, you're going to work in that car with shards of glass everywhere and sharp chunks of metal poking out of the walls of the car. And so every day you've come to terms, you've come to grips with what has happened to you. And pretty soon you believe that walking on eggshells is normal. You believe that walking on shards of glass is normal. You believe that this is just a normal faction of life. And so you have to develop a very good memory. You have to remember where all the shards of glass are on the chair, on the floorboards, on the center console, in the cup holder, on the door handle to the the car door. You start memorizing stuff that most people wouldn't even think twice about. You start recognizing and becoming aware of where to put your hands in the car. You become aware of where to place your feet in the car. You become aware of where you can shower in the car, where you can eat in the car, where you can drink in the car. And so because of all of that, it becomes normal. So then imagine after spending 20 years, or even 5 years, 10 years, particularly from a child's experience into adulthood, they will sense it more, they will see it more as long as they remain observant to it like I did. But then the ironic thing is us empaths, like I've mentioned before, we either become the victim again or we victimize. And in my case, when I became the victim again by marrying the woman that I did, then what happens is you find that wrecked out car that's got all the shards of glass in it. It's got the sharp edges of metal and you start to learn that car. So now you've just gone from one damaged car to another damaged car. And again, this is just for analogy's sakes. And so you begin to, memorize factions and aspects of that car to avoid them, to um, be aware of where your hands are and where your feet are in that vehicle so that you don't get cut, so you don't get hurt. And like in my case, what happened with me is I didn't become aware that I had married this psychotic narcissistic manipulator, I didn't become fully aware because I was so used to it from my childhood that I didn't fully become aware until I had a child with this narcissistic woman. And then that's when I became aware I'm sitting in a wreckage of a car. And now my son is having to, learn where to place his hands, learn how to live in the wreckage of the narcissist. And so now that opens a whole new PTSD segment because now I've brought another individual into this life of carnage and wreckage and violence and distortion. And so now your fight or flight has reacted in a totally new aspect because you didn't even realize that that's what you had done for yourself. So let that sink in for a minute. When people often look at me and they're like, why would you marry a woman who moved out of your bedroom because God told her to marry her ex-husband and not you? A lot of people, they make fun of me. A lot of people, they, question my sanity. Well, when you understand that you grew up in that car wreckage, you grew up walking on eggshells, you grew up avoiding the shards of glass on the floorboard and in the cup holders and in the center console of that wreckage, it became normal, so normal that you didn't see anything different. You didn't see that there is something severely wrong with this person. The only time that you saw that it was severely wrong is when you brought someone else, you brought a child, like what I did, into this relationship. Only then is when I realized, oh my goodness, I've created another victim with this, by bringing this child into this narcissistic relationship. And so it was only then that your fight or flight is activated in full force. And then of course, what do? You don't know what to do. You don't know how to respond. You don't know how to act. You don't know what to do. You don't know what the right thing is to do. You don't know what the wrong thing is to do. You only know that it's not right for that victim to be in that situation. So you try to remove them from that situation. So that's what CPTSD looks like from a person who can't wrap their minds around it. If they can't wrap their minds around it, they need to live in the car wreckage. They need to, understand what it would be like to get in a car wreck and then to live in that car wreckage for 5, 10, 15, 25 years. Only then will you recognize as an outsider what CPTSD looks like. And then, of course, how do you stay away from it? How do you move on from it and grow from that car wreckage? Well, first, of course, it's recognizing that car wreckage. It's recognizing that you were in that car wreckage, and recognizing that walking on the eggshells and having to memorize and having to constantly think about where to place your hands and feet so they don't get cut from the shards of glass is not a normal, it's not a healthy life to live in. And so and so then the and so then you have to be strong enough to move on. You have to be strong enough to step out of that vehicle and recognize it and call it what it is. And I think that's really the difficult thing in society today is discovering what that looks like and then putting a label on it and calling it what it is. Because we want to just, in society, just look it over and be like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Oh, it wasn't, it wasn't that detrimental. Well, if that's the case, then, you know, if it wasn't that terrible, then why does it cause a lifetime of damage? Why does it cause a lifetime of looking behind you in that turn lane? Or cause a lifetime of hearing that turn signal? Or so it obviously is something that is detrimental and creates a lasting effect on our brains, on our consciousness. And not in a good way, because you shouldn't have to fear getting into a car, right? You shouldn't have to fear going to the store. You shouldn't have to react when you go to the store. And so, it's only at that point that you recognize that there is a lasting impression that it leaves on you. There's a lasting um, um, indentation, if you want to call it, into your psyche that um, that nothing can fix, that nothing can um, help you with. And then, of course, it's only then that you recognize raising a child in that same environment is very bad. Raising a child in that is detrimental to that child. So yeah, so that's the difference between complex post-traumatic stress disorder and just regular post-traumatic stress disorder. One's immediate, usually lasting only a few minutes. And there's only 1 to 5 attributes that are triggers. There's not hundreds, there's not thousands. There's only 1 to 5, generally, attributes that lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. Whereas complex post-traumatic stress disorder usually has hundreds of thousands of triggers, of adrenaline rushes that enter into your mind throughout the day because so much causes an immediate reaction. So yeah, so that's where we're at. I hope you all enjoyed my show. I haven't really been feeling like talkative lately, not sure why. Got all my orchids transplanted into bigger pots, and they're looking beautiful. So after that, y'all have a good day, and we will chat with you next week. All right.